The last box was barely in the truck when the headlights cut through the twilight, pinning me in their glare. My new life in Harmony Creek began not with a welcome, but with a gun leveled at my chest. The last box was the heaviest. It was labeled Books and Regrets in my own Sharpie scroll. A little joke from my packing day that felt a lot less funny now that I was wrestling it up the ramp of a U-Haul in 90-degree Georgia humidity. The air was thick and sweet with the smell of honeysuckle and freshly cut grass. The sun was setting, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and purple over the manicured lawns of Harmony Creek. It was supposed to be a peaceful place, a fresh start. My new post as the supervisory special agent for the regional field office was a big step up, but it meant leaving the chaos of DC for this quiet, tree-lined streets, where the loudest sound was the evening chorus of cicadas. I grunted, finally shoving the box into the dim cavern of the truck, my black tank top sticking to my back. Wiping a bead of sweat from my temple, I leaned against the truck's metal side, catching my breath and surveying my new kingdom. A 2-story colonial with a wraparound porch and a yard that would be the death of me. It was the kind of house you see in movies, the kind I never imagined for myself. Growing up in inner-city Baltimore, a porch swing was about as likely as a unicorn. Now I owned one. Life was funny. That's when I saw it. The slow, predatory crawl of a police cruiser down the otherwise empty street. It wasn't just passing through. Its movements were deliberate, the driver's side window down, the engine a low grumble that seemed to suck the sound out of the air. The cicadas went quiet. My senses, honed by years of fieldwork, immediately went on high alert. My posture straightened. My breathing evened out. I wasn't just some woman unpacking a truck anymore. I was assessing. The cruiser pulled to a stop directly across from my driveway, its headlights cutting through the deepening twilight and pinning me in their glare. For a long minute, nothing happened. Just the idling engine and the 2 silhouettes inside the car, watching me. My mind raced. Newtown. Black woman in a predominantly white, affluent neighborhood. A big moving truck. I knew the calculus. I'd seen it 100 times, usually from the other side of the equation. The driver's side door opened and a man stepped out. He was older, thick around the middle, with a gray buzz cut, and a face that looked like it had been permanently soured by life. He rested a hand on the butt of his holstered pistol, a gesture that was meant to be casual, but was anything but. The passenger side door opened a moment later, and a younger officer emerged. He was wiry and nervous, his eyes darting from me to the older cop like a student waiting for instructions. "Evening, ma'am," the older one called out, his voice a gravelly drawl that grated on my ears. He didn't move from behind his car door. "Evening, officer," I replied, keeping my tone level and calm. I didn't move either, keeping my hands visible, away from my pockets, away from the small of my back where my own service weapon was holstered beneath my shirt. Standard procedure. De-escalate. "This your place?" he asked, hooking a thumb toward the house. The question was laced with disbelief. "It is. Just moving in today." I offered a tight, polite smile that I knew wouldn't reach my eyes. "Uh-huh. We got a call," he said, finally stepping away from the car and starting across the street, his partner trailing a few paces behind. "Suspicious person. Unloading a truck. Casing the neighborhood, maybe." My smile vanished. Suspicious person. The oldest line in the book. "I can assure you, officer, the only thing I'm casing is my new kitchen. I've got a bill of sale and a deed with my name on it right inside if you'd like to see it." He stopped about 10 feet from me, his eyes scanning my body, the truck, the house. It wasn't a professional assessment. It was a judgment. "I don't think we're there yet. What's in the truck?" "Boxes," I said, my patience starting to fray. "Furniture. My life. The usual things people move with." The younger cop, Davis, according to his name tag, shifted his feet. He looked uncomfortable. The older one, Miller, just stared, a little smirk playing on his lips. He was enjoying this. He had power, and he was going to use it. "You got some ID on you?" Miller asked, his voice hardening. "Of course," I said. "It's in my back pocket." I made the move slowly, telegraphing every inch. I turned slightly, my right hand moving deliberately towards my jeans. This was the critical moment, the moment where a routine interaction could spiral into a tragedy. My fingers had just brushed the worn leather of my wallet when Miller's entire demeanor changed. His hand flew from his belt to his holster. The smirk was gone, replaced by a mask of snarling aggression. "Hold it! Right there!" he bellowed, his gun clearing the holster with a terrifyingly loud schnick. "What's that in your waistband? Back of your shirt?" My blood ran cold. He'd seen the faint outline of my Glock. "Officer, stay calm," I said, my voice dropping into the firm, authoritative tone I used for tense negotiations. I raised my hands slowly, palms out. "I am a federal officer. I am armed. My credentials are in my wallet, which you asked for." "Federal officer?" "Yeah, right," Miller sneered, but I saw a flicker of doubt in the younger cop's eyes. Miller didn't care. He was too far in. He advanced, his weapon now leveled at my chest. The red dot of a laser sight appeared on my sternum. A tiny, dancing demon. "I'm telling you the truth," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. My training was screaming at me. Threat assessment. Target acquisition. Neutralize. But my humanity was screaming something else. These were local cops. This was a mistake. A stupid, racist, deadly mistake. "You look like the bolo we just got," Miller spat, his voice shaking with adrenaline and something uglier. "Armed robbery over on Elm Street. Suspect is a black female, athletic build. Fled in a large vehicle. Sounds a hell of a lot like you, doesn't it?" It was a lie. A fabrication spat out to justify his aggression. My mind flashed through the possibilities in a nanosecond. Disarm him? Too risky, the other one would fire. Comply? He was already convinced I was a felon. My career, my life, was hanging by the thread of this man's bigotry. "Get on the ground," he screamed, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Drop the weapon I know you have, or I swear to God I will put you down right here on this perfect green lawn." My heart didn't stop. My breathing didn't catch. The part of my brain that feels fear went silent, and years of Quantico training slammed into place like a steel door. His finger was on the trigger. Yes, but it wasn't white. His stance was aggressive, but unbalanced. He was adrenalized, sloppy. The younger one, Davis, was the real danger. He was scared, and scared cops are unpredictable. "Officer Miller," I said, my voice as cold and flat as a morgue slab. I didn't look at his gun. I looked directly into his eyes. You never look at the weapon. You look at the man holding it. "I am Supervisory Special Agent Simone Williams. My credentials and my firearm are registered with the FBI Atlanta Field Office. The weapon you see is a Bureau-issue Glock 19. If you discharge your weapon, you will not be shooting a robbery suspect. You will be firing on a federal agent in good standing. Think very carefully about the report you're going to have to write." I saw it work. Not on Miller. His face was a mask of pure, pig-headed rage. But I saw the seed of doubt I'd planted in Davis's eyes sprout into a full-blown panic tree. His pistol wavered slightly. He looked from me to Miller, his mouth slightly agape. "Shut your mouth," Miller barked, taking another step forward. The laser dot jittered on my chest. "You think I'm stupid? You think I'm going to fall for that? I'm going to tell you one more time. Get on the ground." He was committed. His ego was on the line now. Backing down would mean admitting he'd made a colossal, career-ending mistake. People like Miller don't back down. They double down. Fine. I'd give him an out that let him save a sliver of face. Slowly, deliberately, I lowered myself to my knees, my hands still raised high above my head. The rough asphalt of my new driveway bit into my skin. "Okay, officer, I'm on my knees. I am complying. But I am not lying face down. Now I'm going to give you an instruction, and I want you to follow it." "Officer Davis," I said, shifting my gaze to the younger cop. He flinched, startled that I'd addressed him directly. "Davis, listen to me. In my back right pocket is my wallet. Inside my wallet, you will find my federal credentials. I want you to remove it. Slowly." "Don't you move, Davis," Miller snarled. "Officer Miller, you have a choice," I cut in, my voice sharp as broken glass. "You can either verify my identity, and we can all go home tonight, or you can continue this illegal detention and face a federal investigation from the Office of Professional Responsibility that will end your career and your pension. Your partner knows I'm telling the truth. Let him check." The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. All I could hear was my own steady breathing and the frantic pounding of what sounded like Davis's heart. Miller's jaw worked, grinding his teeth. The veins in his neck stood out like cords. He was wrestling with the monster inside him. Finally, with a gesture of pure disgust, he jerked his head at his partner. "Fine, get it. But if she so much as blinks, Davis, you put a round in her." Davis approached me like I was a bomb. His hands trembled as he reached for my pocket. His fingers fumbled with the wallet, and he finally pulled it free, flipping it open. I watched his face. I saw his eyes widen. I saw his skin go pale. I saw the exact moment that sheer terror set in as he stared at the golden eagle on my badge and my smiling face on the official FBI credentials. "Sarge," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Sarge, it's real." He held it out for Miller to see. Miller snatched it from his hand, his eyes scanning the ID. He stared at it for a full 10 seconds. The laser on my chest vanished as he lowered his weapon a few inches. He looked from the ID back to me, kneeling in the driveway, and a new kind of expression crossed his face. It wasn't surrender. It wasn't apology. It was pure, unadulterated hatred. The look of a man who'd been caught, humiliated, and proven wrong by the very person he despised on sight. He tossed the wallet onto the ground in front of me. "Could be a fake," he muttered, but the conviction was gone, replaced by a sullen defiance. "Run it," I commanded. "Run my name and badge number. You'll find I'm exactly who I say I am. And you'll also find that as of 0800 tomorrow morning, I am the supervisory special agent in charge of this entire region, which makes me, Officer Miller, your new worst nightmare." His face turned a shade of mottled purple I'd never seen before. He knew he was beaten. He knew he was in a world of trouble. But he wasn't going to just walk away. He still had one card left to play. He turned his back on me, took 2 steps toward his cruiser, and lifted the radio to his mouth. His voice was chillingly calm, all the previous shouting gone, replaced by something far more sinister. "Dispatch, this is 3, Adam 14, he said, his eyes locking on mine, a cruel, triumphant smirk returning to his lips. "I have a situation here. I've made contact with the suspect from the bolo. She is claiming to be law enforcement. She is armed, uncooperative, and has made threats against myself and my partner. I need all available units to my location. Priority 1. Officer needs assistance." The words, "Officer needs assistance," are a sacred call. It's a signal that sends every cop within a 10-mile radius screaming toward the location, lights and sirens blazing, expecting a firefight. It's a panic button. And Miller had just pressed it, not because he was in danger, but as a final, desperate act of malice. He couldn't arrest me, he couldn't shoot me, so he was going to do the next best thing, bury me in blue. My blood turned to ice. Before I could even process the treachery, the night erupted. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with terrifying speed. 1 set, then 2, then a chorus of them, converging on my quiet, tree-lined street. Davis looked like he was going to be sick. He stared at Miller, his face a mask of disbelief. "Sarge, what did you do? She's FBI." "She's a mouthy suspect resisting arrest until a supervisor gets here to tell me otherwise," Miller snarled back, holstering his weapon with a smug finality. He had escalated this beyond the point of no return. He was creating a scene so chaotic, so full of adrenaline and confusion, that the truth of what happened here would be lost in the fog of war. It was my word against his, and now he was calling in an army of his buddies to back his play. I rose slowly to my feet, my movements fluid and measured. I wasn't going to be on my knees when they arrived. I scooped up my wallet and tucked it away. I kept my hands visible, crossed over my chest. My mind wasn't on the approaching sirens anymore. It was on the chessboard. Miller had made his move, a reckless gambit born of pure spite. Now it was my turn. The first cruiser screeched to a halt behind Miller's, blocking off the end of the street. Then another and another. Headlights sliced through the darkness, turning my front yard into a stage. Doors flew open and officers poured out, guns drawn, taking cover behind their vehicles. Within 90 seconds, my brand new home looked like the final scene of a bank robbery. At least 8 officers, all of them white, all of their weapons pointed directly at me. "Drop to your knees, hands behind your head," one of them yelled through a megaphone, the voice distorted and menacing. Miller stood there, a sick grin plastered on his face, orchestrating the whole disaster. He was pointing at me, shouting something to the other officers, painting me as the villain. "She's armed. Threatened to shoot us. Claims she's a Fed." This was the crucible. One wrong move, one flinch, one misunderstood gesture, and I would be dead. They were all jacked up, expecting the worst, ready to shoot first and ask questions later. My FBI credentials were useless if I was bleeding out on my own lawn. I needed to control the narrative, and I needed to do it now. Ignoring the shouts, I turned my head slightly and locked eyes with the senior officer on the scene, a sergeant with salt and pepper hair who was taking cover behind his car door. I pitched my voice to Kerry, the same commanding tone I'd used on Miller, but louder, clearer, cutting through the noise. "Sergeant," I shouted, "my name is Supervisory Special Agent Simone Williams, Federal Bureau of Investigation. My credentials have already been verified by Officer Davis. This is a Code 3 misunderstanding initiated by Officer Miller after a failed intimidation attempt. I am ordering you to stand your units down and get your chief of police on the phone. Right now." The sergeant hesitated. My use of proper terminology, my unshakable tone, the sheer audacity of me giving him a direct order while surrounded by his men, it threw him off balance. He looked at Miller, then back at me. Confusion warred with aggression on his face. I pressed the advantage. "Every second you continue to point your weapons at a federal officer is another felony charge we'll be adding to the pile. Obstruction of justice, illegal detainment, menacing a federal agent. I promise you, Sergeant, the U.S. Attorney's Office will have a field day with this. Is Officer Miller's ego worth your entire department going under federal investigation?" The seeds of doubt were spreading. I could see the other officers looking at each other, their trigger fingers easing up. They had come expecting a gun battle with a felon, and instead they found a calm, articulate woman in yoga pants, talking about federal statutes. The story wasn't adding up. Miller saw he was losing control. He stormed over to the sergeant, his voice a furious whisper that still carried in the tense silence. "Don't listen to her. It's a trick. She's trying to get in your head. Cuff her now." But it was too late. I had planted the idea that this was Miller's mess, not theirs. The sergeant held up a hand, silencing Miller, and keyed his radio. "Dispatch, get me the chief. Tell him it's urgent." A small victory, but the war was far from over. I was still standing in a crossfire, my life dependent on the professionalism of a man I'd never met. The tension was suffocating. Every cop was still on a knife's edge. Miller was radiating pure venom, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. He knew his career was hanging by a thread, and he looked at me with the eyes of a man who had absolutely nothing left to lose. That's when I saw it. Out of the corner of my eye, my new next-door neighbor, a middle-aged woman I'd waved to earlier, was peeking through her curtains. But she wasn't just watching. She was holding up her phone, the little red light glowing brightly. She was recording everything, and Miller saw it too. His head snapped toward the window, his eyes narrowing. He looked from the phone, back to me, and a terrifying, desperate calm settled over his features. He knew the video would destroy him. He couldn't let it exist. He took a deep breath, his hand drifting down, his thumb stroking the grip of his holstered pistol. He wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking at the woman with the phone. He took one step, then another, moving away from the other cops, toward the property line. His intent was suddenly, horrifyingly clear. He was going to eliminate the witness. In that split second, the world narrowed to a single, horrifying trajectory. Miller, the witness, and the 10 yards of pristine lawn between them. The other cops were focused on me, their attention divided, their minds still processing the chain of command I had just thrown into chaos. They didn't see what I saw. They didn't see the final, desperate calculation in a cornered man's eyes. He wasn't a cop anymore. He was a predator, and my neighbor was his prey. My training didn't just scream. It exploded. "Gun!" I roared, my voice ripping through the night air. It wasn't a warning. It was a command. In the same motion, I dropped into a combat stance, my right hand a blur as it swept under my shirt. The Glock 19 was in my hand, the slide racked, the sight picture acquired before most of the other officers had even processed my shout. I didn't aim at Miller. I aimed at the space just in front of him. Pop, pop. 2 rounds, fired in a controlled pair. They impacted the grass at his feet, kicking up dirt and dew, a foot in front of his right boot. It was a warning shot, a tactic frowned upon by every agency in the country. But in that instant, it was the only move I had that didn't end with a body on the ground. The effect was instantaneous. Every officer, including the shock sergeant, spun toward Miller, their focus finally ripped away from me. They saw him, hand on his weapon, advancing on a civilian home. They saw the puffs of dirt at his feet. They heard my shots, but they saw his aggression. The narrative he had so carefully crafted was shattered in the space of a heartbeat. Miller froze, his face a grotesque mixture of shock and fury. He had been so close. He slowly raised his hands, the fight finally draining out of him as he realized a dozen guns were now pointed in his direction. Davis, his young partner, looked utterly broken, his own weapon still aimed at the ground. Sirens wailed again, but this time it was a single car, coming fast. A black sedan, no markings, tore down the street and screeched to a halt behind the police barricade. A man in a sharp suit, with tired eyes and the unmistakable air of authority, stepped out. Chief Reynolds. He took in the scene, weapon in a low-ready position, his officers aiming at one of their own, and Miller standing defeated in the middle of it all, and his face went grim. "Holster your weapon, Agent," he said, his voice calm but firm, directed at me. I complied immediately, smoothly securing my Glock. "Chief Reynolds," I said, my voice steady, "you have a serious problem in your department." The next hour was a blur of official procedure. Reynolds was smart. He separated everyone immediately. He took my statement personally, standing right there in my driveway, while a detective he trusted took a very shaken statement from my neighbor, securing her phone as evidence. Miller and Davis were placed in the back of separate cruisers, their weapons confiscated. I watched as they led Miller away. He wouldn't look at me. He just stared straight ahead, his face a blank mask. He knew it was over. The video, my testimony, the physical evidence of my warning shots. His career wasn't just over. He was likely facing a host of federal charges. By the time the last of the cruisers pulled away, the sun was beginning to rise. The street was quiet again, the only evidence of the chaos a few tire marks on the asphalt and 2 small holes in my new lawn. Chief Reynolds stood with me on my porch. "Agent Williams?" "Simone," he began, rubbing his face wearily. "I don't know what to say. I am so profoundly sorry for what happened here tonight." "It's not your fault, Chief," I said, leaning against a porch column. I was exhausted, every muscle aching with the adrenaline crash. "But it is your problem." Miller felt empowered. He felt untouchable. "You need to find out why. An internal investigation is already underway. He's been suspended indefinitely, pending termination and criminal charges. Davis is on administrative leave, but from what I can gather, he'll be a cooperating witness." He folded the second he was away from Miller. He sighed, looking out at the manicured homes of Harmony Creek. "We try to build trust in this community. An incident like this, it undoes years of work. Trust is built on accountability," I said. "Start there." He nodded, a flicker of respect in his tired eyes. "Welcome to Harmony Creek, Agent Williams. I have a feeling you're going to be shaking things up around here." "That's the plan, Chief," I said with a small smile. After he left, I stood on my porch for a long time, watching the sun climb higher into the sky. The air was warming up, the sweet smell of honeysuckle returning. The cicadas started their morning buzz, tentatively at first, then with their full-throated chorus. My new neighbor, whose name I learned was Carol, peeked out her door. She gave me a small, shaky wave. I waved back. I walked back to the U-Haul and looked at the last box, Books and Regrets. I hoisted it into my arms, the weight feeling lighter now. I carried it inside through the front door of my new house and set it down in the entryway. A fresh start. It hadn't been the peaceful beginning I'd imagined, but as I looked around the empty rooms, filled with the promise of a new life, I knew one thing for certain. I was exactly where I needed to be, and Harmony Creek was about to learn that accountability had a new address.